All right, everyone. Well, we are back today and we are very luckily joined by Cody Stamann. So, firstly, Cody, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Right off the bat, the first question I wanted to ask you was that you're a fighter that's fought at both bantamweight and featherweight. We often hear about the 165-pound weight class, but would you support a 140-pound weight class? Because both divisions at the moment, they're so talent heavy that I don't think you'd see the divisions get watered down that much. So, what would your thoughts on that be?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I've long thought that there should be more weight classes in MMA, just because, boxing kind of did it right. They started breaking the weight classes smaller and smaller and smaller, which meant more champions, more cross champions. I just think there'd be more bigger fights to make if they did that. I think it'd be, obviously there'd be more ranked opponents, there'd be more champions, there'd be more championship fights. Guys could hold 2 belts, 3 belts. I think it would do a lot for the sport, honestly.
Cody, you've competed in a lot of high pressure situations, I think, across your career, and obviously you've competed at NCAA level and everything. So for you, what did you find was more of a pressure, or more nervous for you, competing at an NCAA or say your first pro fight?
Definitely the fight. Fighting's different, man. I mean, like wrestling's something that like you have a match every weekend, 5 matches a weekend. Like in a season, if you wrestle, if you do a folk style, it's like a team season with your school, and then you wrestle in open tournaments and freestyle tournaments and stuff. You could have 100 matches in a year easily. So I mean, that's 100 times you compete. That doesn't. I mean, the nerves kind of die. It's just something that you do. You know what I mean? Like you don't really get nervous at that point. But I mean, my first fight, I was absolutely shitting my pants. Like I was terrified. You know what I mean? And I fought before. I was a pretty scrappy kid, but for some reason, just knowing that you're gonna fight, knowing that you're gonna get into a fight and the pressure that leads up to that, I mean, it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah. So, touching on it, as someone who comes from a wrestling background, I had a question for you, which is what are your thoughts on the technical changes that are needed to make a wrestling base effective for MMA? So, kind of beyond the obvious of, watch your neck when you're shooting in, what are some of the technical changes that a wrestler would need to make when they're looking to transition into MMA?
I mean, MMA is a whole different ball game. So I mean, there's really it's mixed martial arts in a whole. You know what I mean? So there's so many aspects of wrestling that kind of fill those gaps to make yourself the best fighter. So I mean, wrestling is, in my opinion, the most dominant aspect of MMA. If you control where the fight can end up, uh, you have a lot higher chance of succeeding. Uh, One of the toughest things I think for wrestlers, like the distance and the stance change. You really have to get comfortable um, closing the distance. Like in wrestling, you're hand fighting, you're head to head, you're right on top of the other guy. But in MMA, the distance is so much different. Once you get a hold of somebody, you're just wrestling. It's the same deal. But it's the distance. Closing that distance, and you see guys, and the Russians probably do it better than anyone. They're really good at kind of disguising. They tons of level changes, and then they shoot. So you never really know when they're going to shoot. You're always kind of panicked about a shot, and that's the biggest thing I think that most wrestlers struggle with. I mean, it's not necessarily the choke so much as it is the just figuring out the distance, figuring out where you need to be to be successful at something you already know.
Mm. Cody, obviously you've competed in boxing as well. You had one, profile in your record, and why did so the question is, why did MMA hold such a more of an appeal to you and caught your interest? Was it more so that it was more multifaceted and required more than one skill? Because in all honesty, I think you have some of the best boxing across the featherweight and bantamweight divisions yourself. So, what was the sort of reason from transitioning and not really going the boxing route and more so the MMA route? What sort of drew you in that way?
So I actually had a bunch of I was 10-0 as an amateur boxer. I won the Golden Glove state title, and I loved boxing. I mean, I fell in love with it fast. One of my uncles actually ran a boxing gym, so it was like kind of like a family thing. So like I love boxing, and if I really thought that I could be a high level boxer at the time, I was pretty good at wrestling. Not great. There are obviously better guys in the country than me. Uh, I knew I wasn't going to wrestle in the Olympics. So I turned to boxing, and I was like, man, I really love boxing. And then I got to spar with some guys that were just elite level boxers, WBC champions. And I was like, this goal. Like, I wrestled for, 10 years, and I wasn't even close to making, like the highest levels of wrestling. And then in boxing, I got to see that highest level really, really soon. And I was like, man, I don't think that, like, if I'm going to be a professional athlete, I don't think this is it. So I was like, you know what? Like, and as a kid, I always wanted to be a pro athlete. I want to be a professional football player. And so, when MMA started popping up in my area, it was kind of like a bucket list thing. I was like, dude, I've wrestled and boxed. I went and watched the fight, and I'm like, I could beat these guys. I could beat the shit out of these guys in these MMA fights, these amateur MMA fights in Michigan. It's like a barnyard brawl. And so I did, and it wasn't until, maybe after doing it for a year that I like decided, like, I think I'm going to give this a shot. I think I could actually be pretty good at it. And after that, I mean, shit, it just took my life over. There's nothing else I want to do.
So you kind of touched it yourself that you had quite a long amateur career, which I think is really beneficial for a lot of fighters to have. For you personally, was it more beneficial in developing the technical aspects of your game, or more of your mental approach to fighting and how you would approach training and competing in general?
I think it's more of it's the mental aspects of it, right? So when you go through something, you do it repetitively, it dulls the anxiety, and it dulls a lot of the nerves that you get. So I had 20 amateur, some of them registered, some of them not, depended on, like when I first started doing MMA, there was no athletic commission in Michigan. So it was like the fights weren't even sanctioned. Like, I could have fought anyone. I actually did fight a professional, like my third amateur fight, because there's just no sanctioning, no one like to say you can't do that. And, but like the amateur, I tell so many kids this because everyone's in such a big hurry to go pro. I'm like, dude, lose an amateur fight, get in all these different situations, fight a guy that's a really good wrestler, fight a guy that's a really good jiu-jitsu guy, you know what I mean? And that way, when you go pro, you can say yes to those opportunities that come, you know what I mean? There's no what ifs. And so many guys are, everybody wants to be, the next freaking Conor McGregor, and they're so convinced that that's them. You know what I mean? They watch all the YouTube videos and they get all pumped up, and they're like, yeah, you know what I mean? I'm turning pro in 6 months. I'm going to fight whoever. And then their career just dies, and like they've never lost before, and they don't really know what that feels like. And it's a fucking horrible feeling, because I mean, fighting just takes your life over, and then something that you work so hard for, it doesn't come to fruition. Like, I see it absolutely just mentally destroy so many guys, like young in their career. They just never come back from it, and then it just they kind of fiddle off and go do something else. I mean, I don't know why we don't adopt more of like the boxing mentality, like the way those guys. I mean, boxing's so much more evolved than MMA in terms of how they train, how they prepare to go pro. Like these guys, like they know who's good before guys ever turn pro. You know what I mean? They know who the elite guys are, and those guys get cake fights until it's time to make some real money. And like in MMA is almost MMA hasn't evolved, but MMA should have at this point. You know what I mean? Like, that sport is just growing so fast. We haven't had a chance to have the same evolution that boxing did.
Obviously, you fought back in January, and you are a fighter that likes to stay active. Would you like to be getting back in there sort of prior to International Fight Week, or are you more looking to take a bit of a break and look towards a full return?
Man, after what happened in January, I wanted to fight the next week. But I had an injury that set me back like a month. So I've only been training like really the last like 2-3 weeks since the fight. So I mean, to get back in the kind of shape that I really feel like I would need to be in, I'd probably need another month. But after that, like if the UFC calls me and they're like, want to fight in a week, like I'm itching to get back in there. Like, I gotta get this stink off me and put whatever shit happened in January and before that, like, out of my mind, and just move forward. I'm itching to get back in there.
Yep, for sure. So, as a veteran of the sport, as well as a mainstay of the division, and someone who also has in-ring experience with one of the competitors, how do you see the rematch between Aljamain Sterling and Jan playing out? Because from my perspective, to a certain degree, given what happened in the last fight, I think maybe some people are forgetting that Aljamain is still a very good fighter. There was obviously a lot of drama, a lot of things that went on in the last fight, of course, but I feel like maybe some people are forgetting that he's still a good fighter.
Yeah, I mean, and he's been in there with him, so he knows what to expect. You know what I mean? I'm sure they're both going to make adjustments. I think Aljo could make more adjustments. You know, Aljo could. There's a lot of things that maybe he rushed in the first fight. Aljo is very good, and I mean, Aljo is one of those guys that he kind of has like an X factor, and like if he gets on your back, it's like I've never felt back pressure like that in my life, and I've trained with him, and that dude gets on your back, and like you're in big trouble. Like it's a nightmare. I mean, he's one of the best back guys in MMA, maybe jiu-jitsu that I've ever like grappled with. I mean, he's really really good in that position. So like I would never count Aljamain Sterling out of that fight. I think if he can make the adjustments and he can get on Peter Yan's back, he can make it really really tough for Peter Yan. Like maybe even finish him with a rear naked choke or something along those lines, or at least wear him out. But I honestly think that Peter Yan is the best pound per pound fighter in the world. Like I just think he is the absolute best. I mean, I've never seen a guy that's more patient, more disciplined with his defense. And he picks the right shots. He's just really, really, really good at landing big shots. And he sets everything up so well. He keeps walking you down. He covers, and he almost lulls you into thinking that like he's just gonna cover again, and then he just smokes you. You know what I mean? Like you really never know when this dude's he's gonna hit you, and like there's no holes in his game. Like I was thinking like, oh, this guy's a sick striker, probably can't wrestle. I watched him wrestle, and I was like, that guy can wrestle at a very high level, like I mean a collegiate level, or in Russia, you know what I mean, like a pre-Olympic level. Like he's very very good. So I don't know who's gonna beat him. You know what I mean? I really don't. I don't see anybody that can really beat Peter Yan right now. You know what I mean? Maybe Peter Yan has a bad night. Maybe Aljo catches him. I don't know, but like I really think Peter Yan is the best in the world, pound for pound.
Stepping aside from MMA for a sec, something that you are passionate about, it's very evident, is obviously hunting and the outdoor lifestyle. I think it's very cool. Is that something that you've grown up with, or is that sort of something that developed over time, that hobby? And obviously we've got some good hunting here in Australia, so if you'd ever consider coming out here, man, we'd love to have you out here.
Dude, I would love to go hunting in Australia. That'd be a bucket list thing. Yeah, I mean, I grew up doing it. My dad was a big hunter, fisherman, big outdoorsman. So I mean, I was going hunting with my dad when I was like 5. You know what I mean? Like I was shooting guns when, you know what I mean? I probably still was wearing diapers. Like, I was so young, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of imprinted into me. And I just, I don't know. When I started fighting, I kind of got away from it. And then, as I got older, I was like, man, I really, really miss doing this shit. And lately I've done a lot more of it in the past few years. And like, maybe it's because I'm making more money now and I can actually like go do shit. Because when you're coming up from MMA, you are fucking broke for a long time. And hunting's an expensive hobby, So yeah, dude, I don't really think. I think after fighting, I would like to hunt professionally. That'd be the next thing.
For sure. So last question, a bit of a fun one. We've interviewed a bunch of the folks over at Team Xtreme, and we got to know who is most likely to come in late to miss the warm up to class.
Dude, there's a long list of guys for that. Who was notoriously late all the time? I mean, honestly, I can't pinpoint one person because it's like 4 people every day. Like a lot of the foreign guys show up. Like if you don't know the routine, you don't know you're gonna get like all kinds of bullshit for being late. Like if you're a new guy, like every new guy shows up late. They show up right when practice starts and they just get hammered. And then they're always on time after that. But I would say like the higher level guys, those are the guys that you would think would be late, right? You think like, oh, the UFC champ walks in, like for sure that guy's 20 minutes late. Like, but those guys are on time. Like real professionals show up on time, So it's really at Xtreme. It'd be like one pro that you would know would be late. But for the most part, I mean, guys that are doing this professionally, like at a high level, like they show up on time. You know what I mean? Like this is a business to me and everybody else that trains there.
For sure. Well, Cody, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. All the best in your next fight, and we can't wait to see you back in there.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Cody.